Welcome to the Empathy Avengers podcast, where we put empathy into action.
Welcome, everyone, to the Empathy Avengers podcast. Today, we are joined by one of the bravest women I've ever met, Zarina Zabrisky. She's a journalist based in Kherson, Ukraine, for the past 3 years since the war has been raging. She actually told us right before we went live that she's got explosions happening right around her. So we're going to be fluid in this episode. Welcome, Zarina. We're so thrilled that you joined us today.
Hi, Mindy. Hi, Pamela. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to the conversation. As Mindy has mentioned, there's an artillery shelling or maybe a tank attack going on right now. So I might be rapidly moving to a hallway, which supposedly is a safer place. But in Kherson, it's a usual occurrence every night. I am an American journalist based in Ukraine. Sometimes there is a confusion because of my name and accent, but I'm a fellow American.
Hello, welcome, Zarina. Obviously a journalist, but what we're going to talk about today is this amazing film that you made, a documentary called Kherson Human Safari. Just maybe talk about that's recently released, I believe, and maybe tell us a little bit about why you made that film and what you're doing now to screen it in Europe and elsewhere.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for your interest. I am first and foremost a writer. I've always written books. I have 5 books. About 10 years ago, I turned to journalism to make active change because it's more hands-on. From the start of the full-scale invasion, I have moved to Ukraine, and I wasn't always based in Kherson, which is south of the country, but I've been moving along the front line. I'm a war journalist for Byline Times, a UK newspaper, as well as Euromaidan Press, a Ukrainian newspaper written in English and published in English, as well as a number of other outlets, including BBC, TVP World, Sunday Post, and so forth. So I'm just trying to report as much as possible from places that are not covered enough. My advantage is the knowledge of local languages. I speak both Russian and Ukrainian, and the local dialect makes it easier for me to move around and get access to places that are harder to get to for other foreign journalists. I came to Kherson, the only regional center which was occupied by Russians in the very start of the full-scale invasion, and it was occupied for 9 months. It was a brutal oppression. Luckily, the city got liberated in November 2022, and the world took notice of Kherson when it was liberated and rejoiced. However, the Russian military moved only 1 mile away across the river. If you're in San Francisco, this is my hometown, you would be having Russians in Oakland while you are in San Francisco. If you are from New York, you would be in Brooklyn, and the Russians will be in Manhattan. And so because of this proximity, they are able to reach the city with every weapon possible and imaginable. And the artillery shelling, missile attacks, tank attacks, mortar, you name it, ongoing. And last year in 2024, in summer, small FPV drones were added to the arsenal. This is something very unusual. This is the story that I happened to break because I was the only foreign journalist in town to observe and report it. It took several months to break the story, but now it's a known phenomenon. The United Nations and Human Rights Watch did their own independent investigations and concluded that these are both war crimes and crimes against humanity. So
Yeah.
all of this is the material of my film. The focus of the film are the wonderful people of Kherson who, despite all of this, managed to keep their spirit up and live with dignity and beauty and inspire everyone, including me, to do art about them. And that's how I made the film.
One of the things I do not remember hearing about was the dam and the flood that followed.
And that is very sad because that was one of the things covered the most. We're dealing with information warfare, so our information space, digital space, is flooded with all sort of news, and because of that, we have a short lifespan for any information, and it's hard to remember things. So much is happening that it would be hard to remember everything, and the city is so far away. That is one of the reasons I made the film about the city, because the things most unusual, remarkable, and some of them that first in history are happening here and need to be recorded and reported, partially for future tribunals.
Everybody wants those to happen very soon. I don't know if you can help us get in the head of the Russians. It seemed like it was a strategic play for them to go after Kherson initially because they had already been in Crimea. Do you know how that strategic played out originally?
Yes, of course, that's an excellent question. Kherson strategically is very important, critical, you might say, because for the Russian military, Kherson is on the way to two major seaports, Mykolaiv and Odessa, both of them very south of Ukraine, with access to the Black Sea, which of course is very important. It's also the way to Moldova and to the area called Transnistria, which is a Russian enclave. There's a very small Russian contingent located there. So if they can make it there, they can move on to Moldova. From Moldova, the next country is Romania. And next thing you know, they're moving on the European Union. It's a known fact that that's a part of their strategy. On the other hand, for the Ukrainian military, Kherson is equally important to make a move to get back the peninsula of Crimea, which was annexed by the Russians in 2014, by the way, and not 2022. Kherson region supplied all the water for agricultural needs and all other needs for the Crimea Peninsula. By cutting the water, Crimea got into a very vulnerable position. If the Ukrainian military can push the Russians further back to Crimea, they most likely will succeed in retaking Crimea. And they say that whoever takes Crimea wins this war. It's sort of like the jewel in the Russian Empire. It is very important.
Thank you.
Talk about the most recent meeting in Anchorage and the European leaders that came to the White House. What you think?
Yes, it is connected and it is not. I have, if anybody is interested in that turn of event, this is something that I've been doing before I moved to Ukraine to cover the war. There was a decree that Putin signed the day of the summit in Alaska. And there is an article about it in Byline Times that I wrote the same day as the summit happened. And the decree was about giving ExxonMobil access to the Sakhalin-1, which is the oil project in Russia, and the reserves worth $500 billion. That's the deal at the heart of the negotiations. It's actually not Ukraine. 2 days ago, the Wall Street Journal broke the story that there were secret negotiations in Qatar between the Russians and Americans about ExxonMobil oil. And Darren Wood, the CEO of the ExxonMobil met several times with Trump over the last few weeks. And this is something that is actually underreported as usual. And this is something that everybody should be looking at, because that really is the deal. Sanctioned by the Russians, along with several other journalists from Byline Times.
How did the Russians sanction you as an individual? What do they have on you that they can touch you?
They put me and a few of my colleagues from Byline Times on their so-called stop list, which stops us from traveling to Russia. That's horrible because we were all hoping to spend a vacation there. But on the serious note, it can cause some issues in the airspace. For instance, flying over Belarus is not safe for me anymore. Going to a few countries that are sympathetic to Russia might be dangerous for me. But I'm already living in the most dangerous city in Ukraine. I got so many calls congratulating me that it felt like an Oscar.
I will say I'm impressed. So you've obviously, to use a California term, you've poked the bear over there, right? So you're obviously doing something right, and you got to keep going, right?
I will.
I think it was FDR who said, "Judge me by the enemies I have made." You made good enemies with the, as you call them in the film, the orcs.
You're a journalist, and being from the United States, I'm sure you're privy to this phenomenon we're undergoing right now with disinformation out there in the media and the press. In some cases, the lack of real news that's coming out of the mainstream media, and that we're all depending on independent journalists and great outfits like Byline and others that are really reporting the real truth of what's going on, and they're not beholden to pressures from corporate media. So I guess I just wondered, what's it like in Ukraine? Does Ukraine also have a disinformation problem? You had that guy in the film at the beginning who, I guess he's in Ukraine, but he's Russian heritage. And he was initially saying that the Russians aren't going to do good for us. Their whole disinformation thing is that the Russian soldiers think that they're liberating Ukrainians from the Nazis or whatever, right? That's bullshit. But I guess my question is, are there others who are still feeling beholden to Russia that are living in Ukraine? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, the information warfare is raging everywhere, including Ukraine, and it is as important here for the Russians as elsewhere. They are trying really hard to get into people's heads. The person you're talking about actually wasn't present in the film because he was dead by the time we were filming. It's his widow.
It was his wife. Yeah,
And
you're right.
he was much older. He grew up and spent most of his life during the Soviet era, and he believed that the Russians were the brotherly nation and they will not do anything bad. He approached Russian soldiers as they were trying to break into somebody else's apartment, and they pushed him with the Kalashnikov and cursed at him. He came home, had a stroke, and he never recovered. He died. And so his widow is talking about it as she's showing the beautiful embroidery that she made. And it's very poignant indeed, because that person was an airplane pilot. Her husband truly believed in that, and that betrayal basically killed him. It has this ancient Greek touch, the scale of how beliefs could kill. We see it here all the time because most people here have relatives in Russia. These are two countries connected throughout history. This sort of betrayal can be traced in history, but not to this scale. What is happening now is entirely brutal. Russians are trying to turn Ukrainians and use every narrative in the Kremlin playbook to prove to them that they are indeed not Ukrainians but Russians, that the Russian-speaking Ukrainians belong to Russians, and there is a number of narratives. I've been writing about them ad nauseum actually in the last 10 years. For most people, those narratives don't work because if at night they are killing you or during the day they drop a bomb on you and your neighbors and family members are killed and they burn your houses, believing that this a brotherly nation is kind of hard. In fact, just today, I was doing some filming and the report at a very sad place. It's called the Island, and it's island across the river, in the middle of the river from the mainland Kherson. And about 3 weeks ago, Russia dropped 4 aerial bombs on this bridge, and now there are giant holes. We had to drive around the holes. Most of the people who used to live on the island evacuated. Before the war, there were 20,000 people living there, about 200 left, and they refused to go. So I was talking to people, asking them why you are staying. And as a result, one lady just suddenly went into this whole speech of how she came from Belarus. She was speaking Russian, saying that exactly what I just mentioned to you, that how can I believe Putin, who is trying to tell me he's here to save me as I'm the Russian speaker? They took everything from us, and now we live without water, without gas, without electricity. There's no food. We lost everything. Nothing is left for us. We're dying. And they are still telling us that they're liberating us. They liberated us from everything we had. But there's still people who believe somehow in the Russian power for various reasons. It's very foreign to me, but it's there. I've seen it.
In the US, we've started to use the term cognitive dissonance because people like Mindy and others are waking up and seeing the light that they've been fooled and in a cult or whatever. I'm not saying people are in a cult, but the idea of waking up and realizing that you've been lied to and that everything you believed and promoted is wrong. I think that's probably not happened here in the United States as much as it needs to, but I'm kind of waiting and hoping that will happen. It's fascinating to see how, if you're getting bombed in your hometown and your neighborhood, does it take that to wake people up? I mean, it's just tragic, but this is a living experiment that we have going on right now in Ukraine, which is tragic.
It's very easy to explain if you turn to family dynamics because it's denial. It's just simply denial. The cognitive dissonance is a domestic abuse situation when the wife is being constantly hit and abused, but she finds excuses for a husband, or the other way around, cheating situation, and the person who's being that's more applying to the West. Like everybody is, oh no, that is not happening. They are not trying to conquer us. The Russians are not indeed into hybrid warfare. It's not happening. And it's like it's right there. It's like in your bed. But yeah, but it's just denial, and there's nothing strong as denial. It's a defense mechanism, and I see the positive sides of it here. If people didn't have denial in Kherson, they wouldn't be able to survive because the things that they are dealing with and are confronted with on a daily, they are in denial. Don't believe that something worse can happen right now. The only road is connecting the city of Kherson, where there's still 60,000 remain of civilians, and that's from 80 just in the city and about 360 with the suburbs pre-war. It's already diminished, but 60,000 people is a lot, right? And so right now the drones are cutting off the only functional road leading to the city. And it's happening now this week. And that's the first in world history drone siege, because drones are attacking cars, vehicles, trucks, anything that moves. So the city administration is trying to install those anti-drone tunnels made of poles and nets. But there are all kinds of issues with it. They're not ideal. They're trying to use electronic warfare to work on the frequency. It's not working. And it's happening. And meanwhile, people are in denial. They're trying to continue with their daily life. In fact, today I was invited to go to a poetry reading. in the city this road is connecting us to. And they will be going tomorrow.
I was really impressed in the film by the spirit of the Ukrainians who have been suffering for so long, and the idea, I mean it's horrible, but it's also was bittersweet and hopeful for me to learn that the city is thriving underground. They're having poetry readings and music, still having community and getting together with everyone, but just underground where it's safe. Maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Yes, and it is here. It probably will die with Kherson, and I hope Kherson lives. But they're very positive people. We will build it up. We will do it very hands-on. As a journalist, it's hard to work here because the moment there is a hit, the attack, artillery, for instance, and there's a lot of destruction, they start cleaning the moment it happens. They don't lose any moments. By the time you find it, which is not easy in the urban environment, they might have already put the plywood over the windows and brushed all the glass off the ground. And that's also a part of survival mechanism when they want to believe that everything is okay. Now we don't have glass. We have plywood, but that's all right. It's actually better. It's warmer that way. Underground, a lot of things are going on: classes, workshops, concerts, libraries, you name it. On the 24th of August, there was a celebration for Ukraine Independence Day. There's safe location, which we cannot mention because Russians will immediately target it. And I know that they are reading and listening to me, so I can't mention it. So we never say it, and we cannot send the invitations out in the open. It's all going through very safe medium. And so there was this concert in the one hall, and the film premiere, that very film we're talking about, Kherson Human Safari, with Ukrainian subtitles, in the other hall. There was such a heavy artillery shelling that some people didn't make it. There was a full audience for both concert and the film, but some people had to leave because their districts were under shelling. One young journalist in the film has a child, a 12-year-old, who was at home alone, and it was too scary. She had to leave and go and attend to her child.
Yeah.
And while we stepped out to get some air between the film and the concert, a drone zoomed by. So it was very meta. Here we are watching it, and here it is. For me, it was a very emotional moment, the way I saw it when I was in the auditorium with all the Ukrainians, all the Khersonians. They were all crying. They were big men. For them, it wasn't inspiring or warm. It was reliving all those horrors again and again. And at the time it was over, I felt horrible because I felt that on top of everything they already enduring, I inflicted more pain. And so when the time came to speak, I couldn't speak. I apologized to them. They said, "Thank you for doing this. This film needs to be seen. We want this film." When I was still in the States, we only released it in June. Since then, we decided to forego all the traditional ways of releasing films. We don't have time to look for distributor platforms, submit to film festivals, or wait a year for a film premiere. This city is being destroyed now. So right now it's being screened everywhere, in America, in Europe, in Australia, here in Ukraine as well. So everybody knows what's going on, and we all together can save the city. People in Kherson, while I was in America, had group screenings, and they said that it's therapeutic for them. It's some sort of a catharsis.
As a fellow filmmaker, I was so impressed with your choices, especially the dancer. All of those dancing cut-ins and cutouts really set a different mood. I felt like you captured, and as she went on, she got more violent with her movements, and you intercut with some of the dialogue of the horrors that are going on. It was so effective to break up the horrors. I did a pro-choice documentary a couple years ago. That's why I'm really impressed. Hard to watch. And you were successful giving that momentum and also that relief from the trauma of the audience watching. It was a hard piece to watch. You have
Speaks to the beauty of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. That dancer was just
yeah.
phenomenal.
The spirit, I felt like she embodied the freedom and the spirit of the Ukrainian people. So I wondered, did I get that right? Or what was your rationale for choosing that dancer and putting her in?
Yes, the spirit of Kherson. There is always a very pedestrian side to anything in film or literature. This young woman is my dance teacher. I go to this yoga studio and I saw her, and she was teaching, and I thought she's moves so beautifully. Women who continue moving, dancing or doing yoga through all the horrors they are experiencing is very meaningful. I wanted to put it into physical form. There are many other dimensions because Ukrainians are very musical and dance is a tradition. The Cossack dance used to be a martial arts training. So I strongly believe that the part of invincibility of Kherson is their athletic quality. The city is unbelievably athletic. Many gyms are still open, underground dance studios, boxing studios. It is hard to imagine when you see the city now, but they do. And as a result, they're strong. They're strong physically, and their strong bodies give them the force to get through. Even those who are not doing some sort of physical exercise, the old people are gardening. They're always out and about. It's a very common scene in Kherson, where you walk down the street, the artillery is going nonstop. It goes boom, it's coming out. So you feel the shell going past you. And then it hits, boom. You don't know where the boom will happen. It might be you. It might be close. It might be far. With that boom, there are all these people standing upside down, their butts up, weeding away, working on their gardens, working on the street gardens. It's everywhere in my yard. And as a result, there are flowers everywhere. The streets are clean as much as they could be because there's glass everywhere, mines everywhere because the drones are dropping mines, so you have to look down all the time. And now there are dead birds everywhere because they are releasing some sort of chemicals in the air. I have the schedule of the yoga class, and every day there's several classes from anything from Pilates to high heels, which the dancer is teaching, like how to dance in high heels. The women who attend these classes are nurses or teachers or somebody who is doing very difficult, risky work, risking their life to save others, and they come to dance. The music is composed by a person featured in our film. That man was born in Russia but lived in Ukraine most of his life, and he was composing music all his life as well. So he was so outraged with everything, so he would put his feelings in the music. And I heard him playing at one of the underground concerts, and we choreographed the whole thing together with the dancer. I'm a lifelong admirer of ballet, so I applied some of Bronislava Nijinsky choreography and some of Václav Nijinsky, and then voila, that was born.
It was really wonderful and very effective. So you chose some of his music as part of the soundtrack for the dancing and stuff. Oh, that's really to hear. Neat.
Dancing, he was also a partisan during occupation. His family also has a story. Somebody was killed by the Russians. Like, it's all interweaves together. And it's all, the director of photography is also Ukrainian. He's a local photographer, very well known. who works for a local newspaper. It was all made with Ukrainian voices through Ukrainian eyes. I was there just like a medium to let it all out and to translate it, not necessarily linguistically, to the world. I feel like a portal, something to transport their vision, their story to the rest of the world.
That's how I felt watching the film. You were definitely successful in that, and I applaud you. And so now you, as you're listening to this, can watch the film. We'll link to Zarina's website so that you have the film, the trailer, other information, links to some of your articles, and donation avenues.
There's much to write about, and so much needs to be covered that I've been writing a lot. The reports by the United Nations and the report by Human Rights Watch about the war crimes and crimes against humanity there.
Right.
There are also some press about the film and some reviews. We were very lucky. We got a lot of reviews. We got a lot of coverage, anywhere from the Dallas Morning News to the Times Radio. We got a lot of attention to the film that was released in such an unconventional way by a first-time filmmaker. I'm very grateful for that, because that global exposure is exactly what we need here when the city is being besieged by the drones. A lot of people feel moved by the film to help immediately. We actually have 3 funds. One for moving families with animals, families with children, and families with handicapped or ill individuals from their unsafe zones to the areas slightly or significantly more safe. And it's not easy to find houses that would accept people with animals. Ukrainians are very, and I say very, it's hard to imagine to what degree they are attached to their cats and dogs. 90% of these people, as a reason not to leave, said that I have 3 dogs, I have 4 cats, nobody will take me, I'm not leaving them behind. And one lady even said, I have my pigeons here, I don't want to leave them. Meaning street pigeons. They're very connected to the soil, to the animal, to the nature, to their homes. It's very unique. I feel much more so than in the States. We move around a lot. We leave our parents' house, we might go to another state, we might come back, but that's not at all the culture there. Some people never have left their home. Some people live in places where 3 or 4 generations, for them it's inconceivable. And their animals is a part of it. So as a result, they only would leave if we move them with their animals. And that's what actually some of the people in the film are now doing, helping others. So the lady with the multicolored hair, Olga, she is there driving people to safety, risking her own life. And with the funds we were able to raise with the film, we were paying for transportation, we found houses, remodeled them, paid for a year or half a year of living there, because it's not as expensive there as in the States. So we were able to help quite a few. There's a fund to help the anti-drone defense fund. This is basically helping the defenders, the military. We were able to buy boats, electronic warfare devices. Right now, there's a need for nets for the anti-drone tunnels. And there's also one fund for the animals directly, because there's a lot of stray animals, a lot of animals are getting injured by attacks, and the shelters and veterinarians help, but they have expenses and need help. Just yesterday, we paid for the surgery for a doggy who was injured, and the people found him. So we, from the film fund, paid $100 for the surgery, and now he's in a loving home. This project is not commercial whatsoever. We have received funding from a private donor. All the expenses on the film have been paid. So whatever money it generates, which is not a primary goal, goes right back to the city of Kherson at the right moment. I'm very happy that we're able to do that. There's
Yeah.
another way people can help. I know a lot of people are already donating to other causes. There's another way where finances are not involved, and that's by spreading the word and raising awareness, educating yourself about the war in Ukraine, about the situation, and educating others and helping to let others know that this is happening right now. 2 days ago in Kiev, 23 people were killed, civilians, including 4 children, 4 to 17 years old, because the Russians struck a residential building with 2 missiles, killing them all in their sleep. And that's the capital. Yeah, I was doing an interview with the BBC about that, and they cut me half sentence because they had more important things to cover. That's what usually gets attention. Anywhere from 2 to 5, sometimes 9 people being killed every day, and up to 20 people injured every day. There are about 2,000 or 3,000 drones a week attacking civilians, and it is not being covered. What one can do, in fact, to help Kherson is to tell everyone it's been already recognized by the United Nations, Human Rights Watch. Our job now as humans is to help other humans, because when you hear never again, it is happening right now.
Thank you for that. I guess one other thing I was going to say maybe is what's interesting, your film, and even today in this conversation, you've really explained how the Ukrainian people are resilient and have figured out just how to live in this new normal. Humans in general are very resilient. We all survived, or many of us survived COVID, and now all of the horrors that are going on around the world, but especially in Ukraine. I think the Overton window has shifted for the people who are just enduring, and this is now their new normal. I feel like it's tragic that this is what's come to, but it's also inspiring that they're just figuring out a way to live and still have their culture and still be a patriot for Ukraine.
People can follow up the story by checking out my reports on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and I restarted my YouTube channel where there will be more stories about people in the film to see what happened to them, because each of them
Oh, great.
continue to live, and there's a lot happening to them. You can find out what is happening with these people now, or even connecting with them is possible. So that's another way to engage.
Oh, wonderful. We'll definitely link to your social media and make sure all of those resources are available in the show notes. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you have to go into the actual thing on your app and you can see the show notes, and we'll have links there, and obviously YouTube.
Zarina, thank you so much for sharing the gift that is Kherson Human Safari. It was a joy to watch it again. And of course, we'll be sharing it as much as possible and get the word out about what is happening in Ukraine every day. As I said at the beginning, I think you're one of the bravest women I've ever met. Thanks, everybody, for joining us again for the Empathy Avengers podcast, where kindness is your superpower and empathy saves the day.
The Empathy Avengers, where we put empathy into action.